Hi, you guys. This is the CreatorsBarn podcast, Talking Music, and today I've got another very special guest in. This gentleman is a performer, musician, and producer. That's only the tip of the iceberg of what this gentleman has done. And I'd like you to introduce you today to Mr. Des Tong. So, hi, Des. Welcome, and it's lovely to meet you because it's the first time we've actually met.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So, really glad for you to be able to come in, and we've had a little bit of a chat off camera, and we've got a few topics that we were going to go through. And at any point, if you something you want to drop in, feel free.
Okay.
But the first thing is, because you've had such an illustrious career over, and as you stated, it's 5 decades. It's 5 decades of, which is quite hard. It's hard to believe after meeting you. But where would you like to start? Not necessarily at the beginning, but roughly, how did you get into becoming a full-time musician before you even got into the other things like the producer, the TV, being an author? So where did you start?
My dad was a pianist, a very, very good pianist. And he bought me a battered old double bass. And he said, I want you to be a bass player. I don't want you to be a drummer because, there'll always be need for a good bass player.
Yeah.
So we did this bass up and I had a few lessons at school, although school was not like they are now. They didn't encourage music. In fact, I was late back from having a lesson, which was in the cricket pavilion where they kept the bats and the stumps. And I was about 2 or 3 minutes late back to registration. And the teacher said to me, where have you been? And I said, I'm sorry, sir, I'd been having a double bass lesson. And he said, and I quote, when will you learn that you will never make a living from playing music? Now, if that's not a challenge.
Yeah.
So I was playing in my dad's trio. We used to do little bars and clubs and parties and stuff like that. Then I went to big school, and all my mates were into like the Small Faces and the Stones and the Beatles. So the double bass was like, need to get a bass guitar. So I bought a bass guitar and started to play that. I was I did a few gigs with some mates who were same age, soul band, and then I was approached by a band of guys who were all older than me, a lot older than me. But I'm the sort of guy who will never resist a challenge. And these guys were really, really good and loads of experience. And I thought to myself, I can learn from these. So I joined this band. It was called Henderson Chambers. And we did lots of house parties, and we did clubs and pubs and loads of work. And then I met a guy I used to go to school with. He was a sax player, and he was in a soul band. And he said, look, we've got the offer of backing some American soul artists who are coming over. Would you be up for it? Again, never resist a challenge. So the first lot we did was Inez and Charlie Fox, who had a hit with Mockingbird.
Right.
And it was amazing. And we did all over the country. And then we did Fontella Bass, Rescue Me.
Yeah.
But suddenly I realised that I was earning more money than I was in 1 week than I was earning in a month, because I was working in the bank at the time when I left school.
Right.
And it just got to the point where, we did one show which was in Croydon, and I had to take my suit in a bag with me, and I had to get the sleeper train back from London up to Manchester, and then get changed, and then go to work in Oldham.
Right.
And then the guys picked me up to go to the next gig. And it was just, what am I going to do? And my dad was incredibly helpful. You know, it's always amazing to have somebody so supportive.
Yes.
So suddenly, I was professional because I left the bank, and there was a band from Liverpool called the Chants, 5 singers, and we backed them. And they came up to me afterwards and they said, "We're looking for an MD to travel around with us. Would you be interested?" So, never resist the challenge.
Yeah. So what age were you when that happened?
I was 18.
Wow. Okay. So it's really young to be approached for that kind of gig.
Yeah. And I mean, literally the first month I was with them, we went to Brussels for a complete month in this club.
Yeah.
And then we went from there to Mallorca,
Right.
to Palma, where we worked for a month. And then from there, we went to Germany. And so the first 3 months, I was all around Europe, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. And, you know, that was it. I was full-time playing. And then eventually I left the Chants, and there was 3 of us, and we carried on backing people. But I was looking recently. I probably spent the first sort of 2 decades in a transit van going up and down the motorway. Incredible, really.
Yeah.
But you could. I mean, we were based in Manchester. I was with the Real Thing.
Yeah.
And we would do a one night in Southend. So we would drive from Manchester down to Southend, do the gig, and drive back.
Yeah.
And we would do a week in Barrow-in-Furness, and we would drive back every night from Barrow-in-Furness.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But petrol was so
Yes,
cheap.
Yeah.
And that's what you did.
Yeah.
That's how, you know. That's
Well, you
what
had to, I guess.
Yeah. So that was like my grounding.
Yeah.
In being a musician.
Yeah. So that was your training ground.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I don't want to jump. You can please backtrack if you need to. So if we jump forward, then and to the point where you then became involved with Sad Cafe.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
So how did that come about?
Well, after doing so long on the road, I actually met up with a couple of amazing musicians from Manchester who were very much involved in the session scene, and they started booking me. So from being on the road all the time, now it was a lot more easy to just go to one of the studios in Manchester, and I was, you know, I was working with lots of different people and playing lots of different styles of music.
Yeah.
You know, it was never the same. So, you know, one week you'd be playing on a pop track for somebody. And then the following week you'd be doing a jingle package for a radio station where you'd have to play probably 10 or 12 different styles of music, which was fantastic. I mean, it was again, a real challenge. And whilst I was doing that, I met Paul Young and Ian Wilson and Ashley Mulford and Vic Emerson from Sad Cafe. Yeah. They just recently they'd made it, and Everyday Hurts had come out and it was a hit, but they were still doing sessions, and so we would bump into each other all the time.
Yeah,
and 1981, I was over in Manchester. And I got a phone call from Paul, and he said, he called me Desley. He used to call me Desley. He said, "Desley, can you come round to the house? I want you to play on something I've just done." Now, Paul used to do. He had his little side things that he did, so I assumed it was one of those. So I went round to his house, played this track, and he said, "Yeah, brilliant, love it. Can you come to Strawberry tonight to record it?" Of course. So I went down to Strawberry, which is in Stockport, and when I got there, Sad Cafe was sitting in the control room, which I thought was a bit strange, but they were very, you know, I knew most of them anyway. I played the track. Wow, loved it, fantastic. Can you do another one tomorrow?
Right.
So, yeah, okay. So I went back the next night, and in walks the bass player. But he made a point of coming over and saying, look, just to put you in a picture, I'm going into management. And to be honest, I never really was a bass player. I was a guitar player, but they wanted a bass player. So, but Paul really loves you, and he wants you to do the album. So, okay. So I did the album. It's called Olay.
Yeah.
And at the end of the album, they said, well, look, we're gonna do a tour. Do you fancy doing the tour as well? Now, this was a real culture shock, because up to this point, whilst doing my sessions, I was in 5 different bands.
Yeah.
I was in a jazz rock band. I was in a soul band. I was in a blues band. Now, I'm going to be playing with Sad Cafe to probably 5, 6, 7,000 people. And I'm not just the bass player. I'm now Des Tong from Sad Cafe, because it's you have to get that through your head. They don't want to see somebody who's just wandered in off the street. They want to see somebody who looks like a star.
Right.
Because in their eyes, you are. So, yeah, I shaved my beard off. Paul sent me and the tour manager out to buy some new clothes.
Right.
And after that finished, it was a case of, we're going to Germany. We did a tour of Germany with Nils Lofgren. Mm-hmm. And then we did Glastonbury when it had one stage.
Yeah.
1982. We did Reading.
Right.
And so I was then well and truly in the rock and roll.
Now, how long did it take you, or did you not need to adjust? How long did it actually take for you to adjust, where you kind of realised, this is me, I'm in this now?
2 gigs.
2? Wow, okay.
I
thought you were going to say a couple of months.
I didn't have the choice. It was a case of, you see, the beauty of it was I knew all the guys.
Yeah.
We'd had about a week's rehearsal.
Yeah.
And no, it just fitted naturally, you know. And yeah, I didn't have time to adjust. It was just like, you're in
and do it.
Yeah. And so and I'm still here and I'm still doing it.
Yes.
Like next week we're rehearsing, and in February we've got some gigs, and we're going to be looking to record some new material, the first in 30 odd years, and putting a tour together.
If you've got that going on, and you've got the work that you've been doing with Cissy Stone, and that led you on to being involved in an American deal, was that right?
Well, what happened was, Cissy and I met back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And we became really, really good friends, and we started to write together. And so we did an album together, which I produced, and nothing came of it, which was not our fault, but it was one of those situations. And we literally kept the 2-inch tapes and put them in the bottom of the wardrobe. And it was through a close friend of mine introduced us to a label in the States that specialise in archive material. Okay. And so his album had been released by them, and I spoke to their A&R guy, and he said, do you have any material we might be interested? So I sent him a copy of this album, and they fell over backwards. They couldn't believe it. So they signed it just before lockdown. And he said, give us about 6 months or so, because what they do is they remixed it for us using the original multi-tracks.
Right.
They had to bake them, because this thing called sticky shed syndrome, where if it's kept for too long, the actual acetate comes off the backing. So they had to bake them, and then they remixed them for us and put it out. And they then put put out like little mixes of female singers, male singers, specific styles. And their core business is film and TV synchronization. And 6 months to the day, we got an email from Jacob, the A&R man, and he said, guys, we've just got you one of the tracks on this show in the States called Work in Progress. And when I heard it was, and this is what Sync's all about, they were in a restaurant, the characters were in a restaurant, and our track came on as background music.
Right, okay.
You know, wow. And then about a year later, another email, just got another track in a show called Good Trouble. Right. Again, a TV drama in the States. I mean, unfortunately, we don't get them over here.
No.
And then about 3 or 4 months ago, we got another message to say that there's a show called the Drew Carey Show, which is evidently massive in America. I never realised, but I saw a promo that was out on YouTube, and it had 7 million views. And he said, we've got one of your tracks on that. So that's, you know, that's their job. When a TV company is making a new show, and they're looking for their sort of music supervisor is looking for tracks, they go to this company, and because they know that they can get a good deal, instead of going to the sort of like the original artist, which is going to cost them a fortune, they want to sound like. And Cissy does on certain times, not recently, but back then, did sound like Tina Turner.
Right, okay.
Well, of a style.
Yeah.
If you actually put the two side by side, you would say, oh, no, she doesn't. But if you don't, and you hear her approach is quite rocky, is quite pushy, you know, and that's what they wanted. They wanted a female singer, a ballsy female singer.
Yeah.
And so Jacob just sent them Cissy's track, and they went, yeah, love it. So, yeah. And we've just done a new album now, which is I'll say it myself, but it's a lovely album. And we were put in touch with a guy who lives in Madrid. He's a British guy called Julian Marsh, who's a remix DJ, and he's evidently very, very well known. And he's remixed 3 tracks off the album for us, and they've all featured in the top 10 of this house music charts all across the world. We get emails from Tokyo, from Miami, from Buenos Aires, all across Europe to say that these DJs are playing our tracks. It's another world. But yeah, it's fantastic.
So you've got, I mean, on top of all that, and then, so you've got Sad Cafe still going.
Yeah.
You've still got the stuff going on with Cissy.
Yeah.
And then I know that, and I don't want to skip over anything. How did you get into the producing side of things?
Well, it first started. Sad Cafe, we got to a point where there's an old saying in the business. I know you don't like that expression, but too much month at the end of the money. and so I happened to be. We were doing a session at the BBC in Manchester, and we'd gone across the road at lunchtime to have a beer. And 2 guys came up to me who I knew one of them, a guy called John Leonard and Dave Shannon. And Dave was a musician. And they said, we're running the Radio 1 and Radio 2 departments. Would you be up for doing some productions? We get bands in. They have to do 3 songs live, and then you get 1 day to record them, half a day to mix them, and then they go out at the weekend. Never resisted a challenge. So I said, yeah, love to. And my first session was Simply Red.
Wow.
Which was their first radio session.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The less said about that, the better. But and then I went on. I worked with Erasure.
Yeah.
I worked with Spear of Destiny.
Right.
Some Richard Thompson.
Right. Okay.
Some amazing acts.
Yeah.
But one thing it did teach me was to be succinct, to know how to say, okay, that's good, keep it. Whereas like with Simply Red, they'd just taken a year to do an album. They had from 10 o'clock until 6 to do 3 songs.
Right.
And, they were messing around and, oh, no, we'll do that one. And I just said to them, guys, we have to get this finished today. Yeah. You can't come in and overdub or whatever you want to do. Everything's got to be done today. And so that's, it taught me that if you hear something and it's right, don't do it again. It's right.
Yeah.
Use my judgment. And so from there, I then got a phone call from a drummer's that I used to work with. His wife was secretary to a guy called Nigel Martin Smith. Mm-hmm. And Nigel Martin Smith is now well known because he managed to Take That.
Right.
But prior to Take That, he managed a guy called Damien. And Damien did the Time Warp from the Rocky Horror Show, which I produced.
Yeah.
He wanted a dance version. He wanted a disco dance version, not the rock and roll version that was in the film.
Yeah.
So
was this one called? It was called Time Warp 2. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, when was it? Just before Christmas, I was at the premiere of Stephen Knight's This City.
Yeah.
And I met Pete Waterman. Right. And Pete Waterman remixed the Time Warp for me.
Okay.
And I'd never met him.
Right.
So that was really nice. But so then I started to pick up. I did a couple of tracks with Damien. I did some stuff with Edwin Starr.
Yep.
Tony Christie, and a lot of local bands.
Yeah.
And it was a fun time. The sort of bedroom musician hadn't quite started at that point. Mm. So, as good as musicians are, I think a lot of them need to realise that you need another pair of ears. There's not many people who can produce themselves. You can probably name them on one hand. That I think that it's just a singer needs somebody to look on the other side of that glass and go, can you just do that one more time, or can you just try it like that, as opposed to them doing it themselves?
Yes, Steve, from a previous podcast, Steve Cooper, I know you know, mentioned about the idea that music is supposed to be played with other people, and as you've just hinted at and mentioned, is produced with other people. Yeah. You need that input, you need that feedback, because there are those times when you just don't know. You say, yeah, this sounds good to me, but somebody else could, as you said, somebody could say, well, you could do that a bit better.
Or you could maybe change that verse a bit, or it's a bit long there. You think it's great, but it's like I'm listening to it and it's I'm getting bored now. You need that extra pair of ears.
I think there's a musician's ego is still a thing, isn't it? Which is understandable,
of course.
Yeah, but
of course.
Obviously, from some of the records that have been produced, where they've had input from the producer, it's kind of proof that it actually does work that way.
There's a guy I've been watching a lot of his stuff online. And he gets hold of the original multi-tracks and then he breaks them down and analyzes them.
Right.
And it's amazing what you can hear and what you think you can hear. But when you actually split it down, it's like, okay, that's how he did it.
Yeah.
And you do need that expertise. It's, somebody who's got the experience. A lot of, I've found, I worked for a studio at one point, and we're getting a lot of young bands in, and a lot of them were really, really enthusiastic, which was fantastic, which was great, but they needed to pace themselves.
Right.
They were coming in 100 miles an hour, and an hour later they were all shattered. Whereas the session was like for 5 hours, and we had to get 4 songs done. And by the end of the first song, they were all falling asleep. So you need somebody like myself who's got the experience to just calm them down and, tell them what to think about and how to go about things.
That's a really interesting point, because I know we've still got, we've got young bands and they want to get in the studio, and because it's such a lot of money now to get into the studio, it's quite nice in one way because they're not all trying to do it on a laptop at home or in the rehearsal room. They're actually going to studios to get the music recorded correctly, and hopefully working with somebody who has got some production, experience. But I think it's really useful coming for you, Des, that you're saying that having someone like yourself that's gone through all of that multiple times in different scenarios is there to be able to say, just one step at a time, take it easy, because the best product's going to come. I think that's really useful for anybody listening.
I mean, Cissy's last album, I did it all at home. I wrote it and we recorded her vocals at home. All the musicians who we used did it remotely.
Right.
I had a harmonica player from Zagreb whose son-in-law had the studio. So we sent him the track over and he played in Zagreb and sent us the file back. Snake Davis played on it. Snake was the sax player on M People, and he played the solo on A Million Love Songs on Take That. Excuse me. He did it from home. We had a guy called Roy Powell, who's a keyboard player who lives in Norway. And Roy worked with myself and Cissy back in like 90s. But he's a big jazz star now in Norway, which Norway's huge for jazz. But we sent him the track over. He put Fender Rhodes on it.
Yeah.
We used a trumpet player, a guy called Brian Corbett, who plays with the Brand New Heavies, and he lives in Smethwick. He did it from his studio. But then I took it all into a studio in Edgbaston and used an engineer called Toby Wilson because I wanted that extra pair of ears.
Yeah.
Even I acknowledge that I can't do it all myself.
Right.
And so to be able to go into that studio and then let Toby, and Toby's not frightened to speak his mind, he's brilliant. And we got a fantastic product because, he was hearing things I hadn't heard, or he was suggesting things that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. So you've been on both sides of the glass, if you like.
Yes.
Do you prefer the performance side or the production side of what you've done?
Do you know? I don't know anymore. I love playing.
Yeah.
But also I enjoy creating.
Yeah.
So, I do a lot of all of Cissy's videos, and I sort of film them and edit them and what have you, and I love that sort of side of it. So, but equally, we've got some gigs coming up, and I can't wait to get out and play.
Okay, so it's 50-50.
Yeah.
That's great. I would like to go into a bit more on that, but one of the things I do want to get onto, because you've done, like I said, you've pretty much done everything. The one thing that did come up, and you said it wasn't something that you'd even planned, and that was during lockdown, and that was how you first became an author. Yes,
I know. It all came about because I worked in local TV, and in actual fact, I was based not 5 minutes away, at the Gold Mine Centre in Walsall.
Right.
And while I was there, I wrote a programme called Streets of Birmingham Music. And we filmed it with myself and Bev Bevan from the ELO and the Move. And we drove around Birmingham and we talked about all the old venues and our experiences of playing in them, like the Rum Runner, Barbarella's, Bingley Hall, Bingley Hall is where the Symphony Hall is now.
Yeah.
It used to be Bingley Hall. I played there with the Jacksons in 1979. Same year that he actually did Off the Wall album. And Michael was wonderful. He was a lovely guy.
Yeah.
We actually shared a dressing room in Bingley Hall because they were doing this UK tour and I was in the support band, and they'd had this massive fibre optic peacock back screen.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it through the door, Bingley Hall. and there was only one dressing room. So we shared a dressing room with them, and they were great. Yeah. It was a really interesting time. So we did this programme, and it became the most watched programme on local TV. Both Bev and I were regularly stopped in the street, and people were saying, you took me back. I met my wife in that club.
Yeah.
I used to go, my mates and I used to go drinking in that bar you talked about. We remember the bands, you know. So Cissy said to me one day, she said, why don't you write a book about it? Well, books have already been done. There's lots of books about Birmingham music, and the amount of research required was ridiculous. So, but I thought, well, I do read a lot. I love to read. And I thought, right, okay, so what if I invent 3 characters, and using the 5 decades of experience that I've got, and also urban myths that you hear about, and also like the little things that like Bev and I were talking about off camera, you know, the experiences that we'd had. And what if I take all those and mix them all up so that nobody would recognise anybody or anything, but just use those ideas and put them to these 3 characters and write a story? So I did that, and it was just before lockdown, and I wrote that, and we were playing at a gig in Manchester, and a girl came to see us who I'd only ever met online, but she was a DJ for Radio Caroline. And so she came to the gig, and afterwards we were talking. And I said to her, just, you know, in conversation, I said, so is this what you do? Are you a DJ? And she went, no, I'm a proofreader.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
So she said, send me your book. I sent her the book, and she said, I love it. I absolutely love it. You've got to do more. You know, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
She said, I'm reading it, and I'm in the club where I know the club where you're talking about. I don't, because I know you've made it up, but I can see it.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then lockdown hit. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do? I'm going to write some more. So during lockdown, I wrote another 4 books.
Okay.
It was one of those things. I used to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning and start, and writing through till about 6. And that was my day, was writing. And I got devious with plots. I loved killing people, you know. It was, you know, I got a couple of friends who did some proofreading for me.
Yeah.
And there was this one guy, and I killed him off. And the woman phoned me up, and she said, I can't believe you just killed so-and-so. And I said, he had to go. She said, but he was a great character. I said, yeah, but he was a, excuse me, bastard, wasn't he? Yeah. And she went, you're right.
Yeah.
He had to go. And that's how I've done it. So when was it? 2022. I was playing at the Jam House with Sad Cafe, and a good friend of mine was there with his friend, who introduced me as a publisher.
Right.
And the publisher said, "Oh, I believe you've written an autobiography." And I said, "No, it's fiction. It's a novel." Oh, what's it about? Sex, drugs, rock and roll, violence, and terrorism. Oh my God, can you send it to me? So I sent it to him. 3 days later, he went, I can't put it down. I love it. Right. I want to do this. Now, the fact that the girl had helped me edit it and proofread it, it was ready to go. Yeah. So literally a month later, it came out.
Oh, wow.
And then I said to him, actually, there's another 4. Oh my God. Yeah. But it's and I think what's humbling to me is that I've got a following now. I've got people who regularly write to me and go, I've just bought your book. It's amazing. When's the next one coming out? You know, I've got photographs on my website of people with the book in Dubai, in Tasmania, all over Europe, and they all take it on holiday. It's a great holiday read.
Yeah.
You know, it's not Shakespeare, it's not Tolstoy, it's just sex, drugs, rock and roll, violence, and terrorism, and it's a people love it. So it's with Stephen Knight at the minute. See what he thinks of it, and it's in with a producer in America.
Right. Okay.
So who knows? Fingers crossed.
I was going to say, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fed up of people saying it should be on Netflix.
All right.
So I've tried to do something about it.
I can say, yeah. Well, that's the way things are going, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
Bang straight into the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, depending on what happens with that, are you working on new ones now?
I am.
Yeah.
I've just finished the fifth one, editing the fifth one.
Right.
And that was supposed to be it. That was the plan. Was it finished on this? It's got a really big ending on the fifth one, and then I wrote an epilogue. And again, that name crops up. Cissy read it, and she said, "That's not an epilogue. That's the first chapter of your next book."
Right.
Okay, so I've written book 6. Well, I've written it, but now I've fallen out with one of the characters, so I'm rewriting the character.
Right.
But it's done. It's actually there. I've just got to take it apart and just improve this character. It's a woman, and she's not nasty enough. She's too nice, and I've got into a bit of sci-fi as well,
All right.
which I know nothing about. So I'm a bit of a wing and a prayer. I'm sure people will pick it apart for factual things, but if you're a writer, you can do that, can't you?
Yeah.
You don't
That's
have to,
that's the idea of books.
Yeah.
Going over the books kind of thing, the author thing, which obviously is still ongoing. You've still got loads of stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everything you've talked about is still pretty much current. It's still happening. Sad Cafe, the books, everything. It's like this. The production side, is that slowed down or come off a bit?
That's pretty much slowed down, but that's my decision.
Yeah.
I do get offers, but it depends. It depends who it is, really.
Yeah.
I produced all the Cissy stuff, and I enjoy doing that. But yeah, let's say never.
Yeah.
But I supposed to retired a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I've never been busier, and I hate sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
If I see an opening, I'll go and do it.
Yeah.
And with Cissy, we've got 2 new songs that we've just written that we're working on. What I did was, in one of the books, I had this idea that this character was a singer, and he released a song which became a big hit in America and in the UK. So I thought it was called The Love Game, this song. What if we write a song called The Love Game, and we actually put it out to coincide with the book?
Yeah.
So what I did was I got this friend of mine who lives over in New Zealand. He recorded the vocals for me, and I did a video for it. I didn't use him in the video. I did it as it's supposed to be a bit psychedelic. It's in that sort of 70s, 80s psychedelia time. So I did a video for it. And in the book, when it mentions the song, there's a QR code. If you scan the QR code, it takes you to the video on YouTube.
That's great. That's a great idea.
And as far as I know, it's never been done before.
No, I can't recall anything like that.
QR codes are huge now.
Yeah.
When I was at the local TV channel down the road, I used to do the What's On show. And I came, and I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I came up with the idea of using a QR code in the corner of the screen. And everybody went, "That's stupid. What's that about?" And I said, "Trust me, this is the future." No. So, but we did it. And then it got taken off because, they couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
QR codes are everywhere now.
Yeah. It's big on a lot of live streaming platforms like YouTube. You see the QR code crop up and you can scan it off the video while you're watching it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's massive.
So this, and also the following book, so that's book 3. In book 4, I've taken I've taken a chapter. You know, there was a TV show called 24 with Kiefer Sutherland.
That's right, yeah.
And it used I liked it because it was in real time. Used to get a clock in the corner that ticked. So what I did was I got this friend of mine he does storyboards for films and TV. Brilliant artist. I gave him this chapter, which it lasts a minute, and I asked him to draw the characters for me in 2D. And then what I did was I created the backgrounds in 3D and put the characters in, and then put a clock in the corner that ticks as the scene unfolds. And I got a good friend of mine, a guy called Chris Kennedy Jr., who's a DJ, and he narrated it. He actually read the script from the book over this one minute. And again, it's in a QR code.
Right.
So you can read it, but actually you can actually do the QR code, and you can see it as like a 3D, 2D animation.
Okay, again, not really heard of that before either. I mean, I suppose this might lead us on to one of the other topics or questions I wanted to kind of put to you was, obviously with this vast amount of experience, and you've commented on it, and we had a brief chat beforehand as well, and it was about what the changes that you've seen, that you think the ones that are most prolific, that might be something for people listening, watching, where maybe they're just starting their career or they're in it and they're still looking for ways to build. The changes that have taken place that you think have made the biggest impact, but either positively and or negatively.
Well, obviously the biggest impact is streaming. Yeah. Love it or loathe it. You can't get away from it. Social media. You have to be on social media. Yeah. Like with Sad Cafe, for instance, their income was from selling records. That's all gone.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is you've got to be able to get out and do it live. Now, we were and are a great band. Early days, we were actually punished for being a great band. We used to get knocked in the media because our biggest time was during the punk era, and punks were just energy and not much else. We were out there, and we could play.
Yeah, and
it was a case of there was one guy wrote a review. We'd played at the Apollo in London. I forget what it's called now, but. He'd been up in the green room before and he'd eaten most of the sandwiches and drunk most of the beer. And then his review in the music paper the next week was Sad Cafe have a sax player. I don't like sax players. I don't like Sad Cafe. That was his review.
Yeah.
But again, today's newspaper's tomorrow's chip paper.
Yeah.
So, if you take those to heart, you're never going to get anywhere. You just, use it to your advantage, really. But certainly social media, you have to have a strong social media presence. You get, we get some lovely comments. I mean, we recently did, this is Sad Cafe, we recently did Butlins. Now, but you laugh, Butlins. It was one of those 70s weekends.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good bands on.
Yes.
Now, we're playing stuff that probably, I would say 90% of the people there who are not Sad Cafe fans have never heard. We're not playing banging hits that they all do. But we're getting messages on our Facebook page saying, you were the best band of the weekend. You made our weekend. We didn't know you were like that.
Yeah.
We are now buying all your products. So, you can use it like that to your advantage.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's massive. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, I think I've spoken with other people who've come on to talk. And we've talked about the social media stuff, which a lot of people, use. We use it for promoting the good stuff. But I think if you're a creative person, especially in music, you have to, because you can't pay for promotion all the time. You've got to do it yourself.
And you don't get posters up anymore, do you?
No.
You used to turn up to a city where you were playing, and everywhere you look, there was a poster.
Yeah.
They don't do that now.
No.
They do it via social media. So,
There's a couple of something you just said actually about the review in the paper. That's one of the things. If you're going back before the internet, the papers and magazines, that was it.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a little bit of a time gap, if you like, where once they were gone, they were gone. One of the negatives, I suppose, of today's social media stuff is once it's up online, it's there forever.
Yes.
Which is a positive and a negative, because it means people who find you, come across you, sorry, like for instance, maybe on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, they can then go back and trace through your history through the online.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Before meeting you, I had a look through some of the stuff, obviously, that you'd sent me over, and I had a look at it. It's a massive history there. And that's one of the best things. Whereas years and years ago, it was, you were buying a magazine or you were getting the album cover to find out who was in the band.
That's right, yeah.
So, I mean, it has got its positives. There is a nasty side to it, but it is, as you just said, it's absolutely, you've got to have it.
The other thing is technology. I mean, the advances in technology, literally week by week, is amazing. I can remember when I first got an Atari, which the number of times it was going to be a Frisbee.
Yeah.
But, you had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I found with technology is if you rely on it, it will let you down.
Yeah.
If everything you do is on computer, you can guarantee that computer will break down at the most inopportune moment. When I produced Erasure, I asked Vince Clarke, because Vince had something like 15 different keyboards, all MIDI driven, and I said to him, and he had a BBC Micro with a what was it, about an 8-inch floppy disk, And I said to him, do you use this live? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, I mean, it's got to be flaky. What happens when somebody kicks the plug out? He says, well, we start again. We just start again.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, yeah. But full well that at some point or other, I mean, Sad Cafe once did the Apollo in Manchester. And about halfway through, there was a power cut. Boom. Yeah. Everything went. So, quick thinking and experience. Ian went and got an acoustic guitar and sat on the front of the stage with Paul, and everybody sang to the audience like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you're just reliant on keyboard, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's that. I love this saying: you cannot buy and you cannot teach experience.
Mm-hmm.
You can only live it.
Yes.
And, no matter how much you can teach people, they've got to experience it to understand it.
Yeah.
It's just one of them things, Yeah,
there was a saying once, I don't know if you'd agree with this, and I can't remember who it was. It was an interview with someone, and they were talking about if you want to produce something now yourself, and you're going to record, try and use live actual instruments rather than, because if you're using electronic instruments, in a month's time, that keyboard synth plug-in has gone, and now but I know guitar's going to sound like a guitar. I mean, the electric guitar, okay, yes, it has developed, but really it hasn't changed that much.
No.
Since the Fender days.
What I tended to do with my productions is, okay, we did use a lot of program stuff, but I would introduce live music, live instruments.
Yeah.
And that blurred the difference between it being, say, quantized. I would work really hard to get rid of the quantize and make it feel, if you're using drums but they're not live and you're programming them, move them around a bit, because no drummer plays exactly on the same beat every single time, and also the volume's not going to be the same every single time. can get it close, but if you spend time and move it around a little bit, it breathes. But then if you had a real guitar or a real bass, then you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing along with that drummer, that drum program, and you're moving with that movement, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on a minute.
And some of the samples, especially drums now, they've become so good.
Yes.
It's quite difficult. I'm not going to name brands and stuff because but they've become so good now.
But on the other hand, I've the drummer that Cissy and I use, who we've known for years, a guy called Roy Martin. He's a scouser for his sins, but he is now making a very good living through his little studio in Liverpool and doing remote drums.
Yes.
So people from all over the world are sending him their stuff, and he's playing live drums on it.
Yeah.
And sending it back, and he's doing really. I mean, he's a great drummer.
Yeah.
But that is one of the ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of linking back into what we were talking about, those changes. I mean, you mentioned earlier about you're getting people, and we were getting people to record all over the world and then send it you. That's a massive advantage now to be able to get that.
I mean, data. The use of data nowadays and transferring data. I worked for a company down in Banbury called Audio Motion, and we did motion capture. We did like motion capture for Gladiator and Robbie Williams Rock DJ and things like that.
Right.
But I ran the audio department, and I was using huge amounts of data. Yeah. But at the time, it was incredibly expensive.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I had an emulator sampler, and it had something like, was it 24 meg? Right? And I wanted to update it, and they sold it in bars of 12 meg, which you installed in it, and I think 12 meg cost something like £50. Yeah. 12 meg.
Yeah.
And my boss said, well, how much do you want? And I went, well, I want like 4 of them. He said, that's 200 quid.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but it will give me the facility to be able to put a backdrop of sound for the whole video or whatever we were doing. I don't know. I'll have to put that to the board of directors, 200 quid for 50 meg.
Yeah, I know. Yes, you can't believe it, can you?
No.
Compared to now.
No, and you can buy a thumb drive now with 2 terabytes on.
That's right.
And we actually priced out a render farm, which was 1 terabyte, and it was about 6 racks of the innards of computers.
Yeah, and
it was something like $5,000.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So that side of it is every week you hear these massive jumps up, but like I say, being able to transfer that data and send things to people. I mean, when somebody says, "Oh, can you send me that?" The fact that you can just go onto a program and just press send and it just and they get it.
Yeah, I'm right in saying you use Logic.
I do.
Your production work.
Yeah, I use Logic for music. I use Final Cut Pro and Motion, Apple Motion.
Yeah.
I love Apple products. This is not an advert, but I just love the fact that they're so integrated, so that I can use Logic and then it links in with Final Cut Pro.
Yeah.
And it links in with Motion. So, you can just do something, save it, send it across, and there it is.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing,
Yeah, I'm assuming you've run a relatively powerful Mac then to cope with Motion.
It's not that. I mean, it was the biggest I could get at the time.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about updating it, but no, it's everything I do. I do green screen work with Cissy, and I just take it down and I use an iPhone to film.
Yep.
With lenses, I've got some special lenses, but and it all just links in together.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Something that Steve said, which quite amused me actually, when he was going on about having being able to prepare for stuff and having that, the time up front to prepare. One of the most frightening gigs I've ever done was at the NEC. I think it was 1982 or 3 with Engelbert Humperdinck. Now, and you smile.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Engelbert Humperdinck, well, Save the Last Dance.
Well, no, I'm just thinking of that name. Just, going back to,
But he'd been in Las Vegas for like about 5 years. The NEC was having I think it was an anniversary or something. So they got him over, and I think they got Barry Manilow and Barry White as well.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do the show that he was doing in Las Vegas, except with the rock rhythm section. So I got a phone call. My friend Paul Burgess, who's the drummer with 10cc, got a phone call because we used to do a lot of sessions together. And there was a guitar player and a keyboard player. And they said, would you be up for doing it? So we said, yeah, why not? It was being recorded live for BBC, and it was live at the NEC. So it was, nice little payer.
Yeah.
So we turned up we had 2 days rehearsal. We turned up on the first day, and we were given a book that was like that thick of the parts. There was a 32-piece band. So we had something like 12 brass section behind us. Mm. We had the string section from the Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. So we stumbled through day 1, and then day 2 we had a rhythm section rehearsal with him. And then day 3 was the gig. And there was like 5,000 mums there, and they actually did throw knickers on the stage. Oh yeah, it was, but it was terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the other thing was as well that I couldn't have my amplifier on stage with me. He'd had this special stage built out of pink velour, and there was holes and a grill. So I had to put my amplifier underneath the stage. So I had to run the wires through the holes in the stage into the amp, and then monitor it through this grill.
Right.
I had two music stands with the music spread out across the front, and I'm right in the middle. I've actually got a video. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. But I'm right in the middle of the stage, right behind him. So I keep getting all the shots of me dancing, off a moving target at all times. But that was a terrifying gig.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I mean, I can read music.
Yeah.
And that's another thing as well that entered my mind. I went to a meeting one time in Birmingham, and it was supposedly about music and music professionals and that. And a load of kids all came in who were supposedly, producers and A&R and whatever. And there was this one lad, and when the guy said, what do you do or what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a session musician. Right, okay. What do you play? Bass. Okay. And I said, can I just ask you, do you read music? Well, he says, I read tab.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something for now. You will never get tab given to you.
Yeah.
Wherever you go.
No.
The reason you read music is an aid to memory. It just helps you get there quicker. You don't have to rely on it. But if I'm a producer and I've got a musician coming in and I've got a 3-hour session, I don't want him spending 2.5 hours learning it.
Yeah.
I want to be able to give him a piece of music and he'll go blah, 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 and he'll play it. And then all we've got to think about is fine-tuning it.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought of that. So I said, well, do yourself a favour and either get some lessons, or you can do it online now, but just get a basic understanding of music, because it will never let you down, And yeah, it's all right. I'm doing a session with some mates and you're just sitting around and you're just jamming. Great, okay. But when the money starts to come in, and people want to pay you money, they don't want to sit around while you learn it.
No.
You know,
that's one of the hardest things to get across.
Yes, and it's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my life stories I did with Clem Catini. Now, Clem Catini is a drummer. He played on, at the time, 32 number one records. I mean, God knows how many number twos and number threes he played on. But I mean, he played them with all the greats. The Walker Brothers, Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, but all those. He played with the Kinks, he played with T-Rex. And he said one of the tracks that he's quite famous for is Shaking All Over Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. Now, there's a drum fill in that. And he said, at the time, he didn't read. And the producer said, when it gets to this point, there's a 1-bar drum fill. Can you do that? And he went, yeah, okay. And so when it was recorded, he did a 2-bar drum fill. Now, he said, I was mortified. Thankfully, the producer said, it's amazing. Don't worry about it. We'll keep it in. But he said, from that day onwards, I learned to read music.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't ever put myself in that position again. And he was doing 3 sessions a day. So that was like from 10 till 1, 2 till 5, and like 8 until 11. And he had 3 kits, different studios. And he said he never knew half of what he was doing because there was no titles on any of the tracks. They would just come in, they'd put the music down, they would play it. Is that good? Yeah, next one. They'd probably do about 6 or 7 songs per session, maybe even more. And he never knew what they were. And then, like years later, oh, did I play on? I played on that. And then he'd get the money for it. Oh, yeah, I definitely played on it. But, you know, that I remember when he said that, you know, it was like, yes, I agree. I mean, I was in a similar position when I first started doing sessions. And I was lucky that the guys that I was working with were good players, and we all got on. And so they helped me. But again, I got me books out and got a few top-up lessons. And that way you can go in and you can relax. If you know anything that they give you, you can play, and then it's all down to how you sort of
deliver it.
Deliver it, yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's quite nicely to kind of leading on. I think you've covered a couple of little bits just there, Des. But one of the final points I wanted to kind of go over with you was talking about. What would you say? I've asked people before, and I've said, "What would you tell a younger version of yourself?" Or what would you tell any young person that's trying to get into the music business industry? What would your advice or comment be on that?
Yeah, I think take notice of what people tell you, like especially people with experience. Get to work with people with experience. Never say no, or never resist a challenge. I'd follow your heart. You know, I've always loved to work with people that maybe I felt were better than me, but not being afraid to get with them. And so, you know, right back early days when I was offered this job with these guys who were a lot older than me, but I learned so much from them.
Yeah,
you know, and it's all down to that. You know, get that experience from people, learn, listen to what people say. You know, you could look at it the other way and say, don't bother because it's a nightmare, but it's a challenge. I think the industry now is a challenge. You know, you've Sad Cafe. You know, we've been off the circuit for a long time, so we're finding it a challenge to get back into. We've got fans, but it's getting more fans, and you know, coming up with new stuff. So, write new stuff. I don't know. I love it. I love the industry.
Yeah.
You know, it's the creative industry is what it's all about. And I might get myself into trouble here, but I'm not a fan of tribute bands.
Yeah.
I like people to play. I mean, if everybody becomes a tribute band, there's going to be no new music.
We talked briefly about this. I've talked to one of the previous guests, Zach, and what he does wedding and function bands. He's also doing a country covers band, and that helps him fund his original music because he's a writer as well.
Right.
And that's all helping him fund his original material.
Yeah.
And I think Steve commented on it in the podcast we did with him, where he talked about there's a place for these bands. You can go and see them. But I often find when I speak to quite a few people that play in some of these covers and tribute bands, and most of them use it as a way to fund their own music.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the venues don't sort of see it like that.
No, I know, because, and again, we come at the venues have now gone to the point where they know they're going to get punters in. Punters will do the bar, which is worth 50 times what somebody's going to be able to pay a band to come in and play.
Yeah.
So they know it's a money maker. But something you talked about, I don't want to go off too much on one, but the venues that were around years ago, even when I was young and I was going out and I was playing, the venues were around then, whereas now, well, for some time, especially with COVID, a lot of those smaller venues, the 200 capacity venues, have shut down.
Yeah.
They seem to be creeping back in now. They seem to be creeping back in slowly, but they are creeping back in.
Yeah, we've done some really nice 200, 150, 200, 250 seaters with Sad Cafe, all over the country.
Yeah.
And they are making a comeback. It is a shame that, the nightclub scene in Birmingham was immense.
Yeah.
Certainly in the late 70s. You could go out every night. And I played at Barbarella's, let me think, when was it? 1971. I did 7 nights. I was with the Chants, and we would support to the Four Tops. And they played there for 7 nights, and it was full every single night.
Right.
When you think about it, and you had the Night Out, which was open 6 nights a week, I think, and the Rum Runner and all those places, and that they were like the you could go to every city and it was the same. Manchester was the same. You could work every night of the week in Manchester and not do the same place twice. So it's difficult now.
I was going to say, I don't think there's anywhere that's like that now.
No,
I don't think there is anywhere.
No.
But the thing where you were going back to where you're talking about the young people, the experience thing, I think that's a massive point.
It is.
Learning from others that have been there and done it.
Yeah.
That's why it's great having people like yourself and Steve and the other people that have come in beforehand. They've all been doing it for some for less time, obviously.
Yeah.
But having you guys coming in and talking about this stuff, I think it's fantastic for people listening, watching, no matter what level they're at.
Yes.
So, is there anything else you want to add, Des, before we wrap this up?
I don't think so.
I know, I'm aware that we've only really skimmed the surface of what you've done. But if there is anything you want to add, but if not, we can finish it there.
Well, no, you've got here TV and broadcasting, the biggest learning curve.
Yes.
Again, that was something that just happened, and again, I didn't really have time to think about it. When I did the life stories that I did on local TV, the guy who was doing the series before me, it was Mike Prince, who he came from Central TV, very vast experience, and very, very unflappable. And there was another guy called Bob Hall, again, been there, done it, and you could say to him through the headphones, we can't show the next video. Can you just fill for a minute? And he would, without seamlessly, he would do it. So you've got these two guys at the top, and you're watching them, and at the time I was just producing and editing, but then one day Mike asked me to step in for him because the guest, he didn't know the guest, but he said, you do. And so, there'll be a rapport between you. So I had literally half an hour before the guy turned up. So I had to go and buy myself a shirt and have a razor and have a shave. Guy came in, who I knew. So we just had a bit of a chat. I wrote down a couple of notes, and then we just started. And it was all of a sudden I am on the other side of the camera.
Yeah,
the camera's looking at me. So what do? You just do it. You've got to do it. You can't not do it. You can't clam up. And I suppose the years of experience of going out on stage, and like you said to me about Sad Cafe, how long did it take you to? Well, that was another, same situation.
Yeah.
I just had to do it, and so, and one thing you never do in music is stop. Live music, you never stop. If you make a mistake, here's a tip to young musicians. If you make a mistake, do it again the next time round. And then they don't know it's a mistake. Yeah. They think you meant it. But, so I did this. I interviewed this guy, and everybody loved it. And they said, can you do another one next week? And then it became a series. Ended up doing 15, I think.
Yeah.
And I was getting people saying to me, I love your style, because I'm not, it wasn't like Piers Morgan, nailing them with questions. It was just a chat.
Yeah.
It's very relaxed because I knew that was the style that the person who I was talking to reacted to.
Yeah.
And it was, it was fun. But if you'd have said to me, I don't know, a week before it happened, you'll be presenting that, no chance.
Yeah.
But because I wasn't given the option, you just, and it the more I did it, the more I got into it, and the more relaxed I became. It was, and sometimes the actual person I was interviewing was more nervous.
Yeah.
You can't believe it, but they're like shaking.
Yeah.
They're that nervous, and it's like, oh, calm down, it's okay. We're just having a chat.
Yeah.
Forget the cameras, we're just having a chat.
Yeah. One of the things that you did say, and I'm just going to link back onto, but not so. It's something that I kind of changed my attitude around and towards, and I think something that I would try and say to, again, like you said, it's to never say never, accept the challenge.
Yeah,
and that's with everything. It's not just music; that's your life.
Yeah,
never say never to anything, because it will put barriers in place that later on you'll regret because they could have been removed quite easily.
There's been instances where I think back and I think, I wish I'd have done that.
Yeah.
I was a bit too shy about going forward.
Yeah.
And so I didn't accept that opportunity. And I wished maybe I had have done. But there again, if I had have accepted that opportunity, would I be where I am now?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so it's you just got to do it.
You
just got to
and learn from it.
Yes. Yeah. And if you get it wrong, do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, I when I first started at the TV and I was dropped into it. I mean, I was supposed to. I joined as a producer, but then within a few days I was editing. But there was a few technical things that I wasn't aware of, and I had to learn, and it was trial and error. I remember one of the programs I put out. It looked dreadful. And I was like, oh, my God. I was watching it, and like, oh, no. But I knew what I'd done wrong.
Yeah.
So I went straight back in the next day and readjusted all the settings. And then the following week, it was right.
Yeah.
But, you've got to accept that, you're going to make the odd cock up, but...
Learn from it.
Learn from it.
Yeah. Well, I was always trying to say, that you never really learn anything from doing it right.
No.
You've got to make the mistakes to learn.
Absolutely. So,
yeah. No, I think that's great. Are you happy to call it there, Des?
I am, yeah, if you're all right, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I have said this to everybody, and I'm going to say it to you, but it'd be lovely to get you back in. Because I do only think we have only scratched the surface, especially talking pre-recording.
Yeah.
Some of the things you're talking about, I think it'd be great to get you back in if you're up for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's been great listening to you. And what I'm going to do is do a quick sign out.
Okay.
That's okay. So, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. And thank you again to my fabulous guest, Des Tong. All his links, social media, etc., to do with his music and books will be in the description part of the video. Don't be shy. If you've got some thoughts, opinions, share them in the comments. Let me know if there's any other topics that you'd like covered in future podcasts. But again, thank you very much for your support, and hopefully catch you on the next one.